So this week's tutorial by request is going to be on inverting on a spinning pole. Had a couple of questions about why is it harder to invert on spin and what's the difference between inverting on spin versus static. So for a lot of people, it's funny, if you ask polars, is it easier to be on spin? Is it easier to be on static? You'll get mixed answers. Really, it's about what you're most comfortable with. When I first started pole, I preferred static. Spinning kind of scared the crap out of me, and I found it was very difficult. But the reason why I was having such a hard time with it is because I hadn't learned how to use the spin in my favor. So it's the same thing when you take it to an invert. When we're on static pole, our invert can just be straight up. Okay, it's going very linear. Okay, so if I'm on static, I just go up and back down. When I'm on spin, if I'm trying to make a linear invert, I'm fighting centripetal force. So if you can't beat them, join them. So what we're going to work on is when the pole is on spin, is harnessing that spin to help you make your invert easier. And you'll see people invert in different ways on spin pole and static. Some people invert forward, some people invert backwards. I prefer the front to the front invert on spin because it uses the centripetal force, but once again, it's personal preference, okay? So if I'm going to go into the spinning invert, I'm rotating into the spin. We're going to start with just the positioning in the very beginning, okay? So for this one, my invert position, inside arm low, outside arm high, I want to think about lifting my hip, my outside hip, okay? So what I'm trying to do is turn into the spin. I don't want to kick out this way. Instead, think of it like a spiral. So I want to think about my body spiraling up like a barbershop pole to use the spin of the centripetal force. So here's step one. I'm going to step inside foot. You can keep the outside leg bent or straight, personal preference, and think about tipping to the side, really engaging your obliques and lifting that hip. Okay, so here's step one. Okay, see how much my body's leaning to the side? In doing that, with that tip, I've already brought my hips up so they're already halfway to the invert, okay? And I'm using the spin. Once I have that tip and step one makes sense, the next step is tipping back. I've already put myself like in the wave or in the spin, in the centripetal force. So then the next part is not so bad, okay? So start with step one. I don't know if you noticed, but my inside leg, I'm not lifting it off the ground. Really think about having this hip flexor relaxed and this leg just hanging. You can drag it on the ground if you want. Those of you that are still maybe building your strength and pull, let that foot drag, okay? Keep it on the ground. Don't feel like you have to lift if you're still working on the upper body strength. Put socks on and let it slide, okay? It's a great way to start conditioning. So I want to think about lifting that outside butt cheek. Think about showing your booty to the crowd, okay? Once step one feels comfortable and it's solid, then it's just a matter of rotating back for step two for your invert. Legs can be bent or straight. I actually like the look of the outside leg bent. It's just a stylized thing. If flexibility is a little bit more of a challenge for you, it's going to be a lot easier for you to find the proper position if you do bend that leg. Okay, so if flexibility is an issue or if you just like the look of it, bend that outside leg because you'll get a little bit more lean to the side. Okay, so step one, step inside foot. Outside leg is going to lift up as I tilt. Think about butt stays on one side, boobs are shifting to the other. Okay, so tuck from here, roll to the full invert. So what I find oftentimes for a lot of people is step one, got it, totally makes sense. And then when I say to move on to step two, step one goes completely out the window. So don't rush to the invert part. You want to get to the point where you're able to get into step one and almost feel bored, okay? If you shortcut step one, step two is going to be a lot of work, okay? So a spinning chopper, that's basically what we're doing. We're doing a spinning chopper. It can be on static, it can be on spin. Spinning chopper requires less effort than a straight up invert because we're using that centripetal force to help us up. If you shortchange your spinning chopper, it's just a regular invert, okay? So take the time to get comfortable with step one, okay? Let's look at it from the other side. Tip, rotate. Okay, so start with step one. Work on getting that shift that oblique lift, tipping, okay? One of my favorite things to remind my students of is in pull, so often we need our butt to go above our head. You have two options of ways to get your butt above your head. Either A, you can lift it, or you can drop your head. Okay, so that's kind of what we're doing this. We're doing twofold. Instead of just straight up lifting our butt, we're dropping our head and lifting our butt. That way, basically, they're meeting in the middle. So really pay attention to this tip. So if you go into this one and you're struggling with it, video yourself and look at it and look and see where your head is. Is your body getting relatively horizontal, or are you staying very vertical? If you're staying very vertical, you're not harnessing that centripetal force. And by keeping your head up, it's a lot more difficult to use to lift your hips there. Okay, so try this one out. If you're new to inverting, you start with that step one. You can do it all day long. It's a great conditioning exercise. If you are an inverter, but you haven't done a spinning chopper or don't invert on spin, like the same thing works on static or spin, try this one out. If you try it out, I'd love to see it. Okay, share your videos with me. If you have any questions, please feel free to comment below. I'd love to hear your questions. If there's spots where you're struggling, possibly I can answer your questions, and I'd love to help you with those. So try it out. Let me know how it goes.